This week, we are going to start working with Django, which is a server-side framework based on Python. And we are splitting this into three parts because it is a framework. There are conventions that you need to pay close attention to, and you need to follow these conventions in order for your application to work properly. So what we're going to be looking at this week is setting up the environment, the virtual environment that you are going to be working in and testing in, setting up your project with the correct folders and file names, creating a couple of models which serve as the basis for your database tables. And then we will be performing migrations, which basically takes the code from the model and it actually generates the database table. We will also be creating something called a super user account so that we can add entries and perform administration at the site that we are going to be working with. And then we're going to do some very simple web pages that will display the data that we have added to our database tables. If you are familiar with MVVM or MVC, you will notice some similarities in Django. The terminology is a little different. In Django, what they call a view is what MVC would call a controller. It basically grabs the data that the HTML page needs to display, and it renders the proper HTML page based on the command that was executed. And so when you're all done with this chapter, you are going to have a little environment that looks like this, and you'll see it's nothing fancy. We aren't really going to get into styling until chapter 20, and we'll use Bootstrap for that. But we have a couple very simple links at the top. We'll have two different models. So basically there's two tables and they are connected through a foreign key, which you will be specifying in the model section. We have topics and then we have entries, and the entries are connected to the topic. So if you select a topic, you can see that this one has two entries. And we go back to topics, we select one. This one has one entry. And then this is what it looks like if there's no entries. The administration site that you will be creating a super user account for looks something like this, although you will have to log in. And this is where you can do your entries. You can add topics, you can add new entries. It just makes it very easy to add data. So that's basically what we're going to be using this for in this particular chapter. So if I wanted to add a new topic, let's see. Okay, so now I have another topic added. And then if I want to, let's say, add an entry, I can just do add, and then I have a drop down with my topics. I could add whatever text I want and save it. And now I would have a entry associated with weights. So if I get out of the admin section, actually go back out of here, and now I go to topics. And now I select weights. I actually have that entry that I just added. So you will be doing something similar. The only, I think, confusing thing here is that you'll be working in VS Code. Okay, and so you'll have your learning log project here. And you also have to work at the command prompt, and you'll end up with two of these open. One of them is going to be for the running application, which is this. And then the other one is going to be for you to basically execute commands. So you'll use this one to set up your virtual environment. You have to activate the virtual environment. And then anytime you make a change to a model, you have to perform migrations, which update your database. So kind of that's an overview of what you're going to be doing. Obviously, there are more detailed instructions in Chapter 18. Make sure you read through all of this because this does walk you through everything step by step. There is a section that explains everything, followed by a hands-on section where you actually do it. And there is a video here that walks you through, how you go about creating this app. Just keep in mind that you're going to be viewing it on the web browser. You will be dealing with code in VS Code. And then you're going to have to be executing commands in the command prompt. So there's quite a bit going on here. But it is very procedural, which is good news. And my word of warning is do not vary from the names that are used in the book or in the hands-on, because of the conventions in Django. It is expecting specific files within a specific structure. And so if you start changing the names of the folders and modifying the structure, you could very well break your application. So until you learn this better, right, make sure you follow through with the conventions the way they are. And then once you go through this and you go through creating the pizzeria, which is an additional exercise you're going to do, then you should have more of a handle on what the conventions are, so that next week when you start working on your last project, you will be able to come up with your own unique names. Okay, but for this week, make sure you stay with the names in the book and in this lecture demo. Creating the learning logs is pretty straightforward as long as you pay attention to detail and you follow the naming conventions. For the pizzeria, that goes with the different try it yourself exercises. And so I have you doing that at the very end of this. So at the very bottom, we scroll all the way down. There's a lot of screenshots in here, so that's why it looks rather lengthy. But if we ever get to the bottom here, on your own. So these are the various try it yourselves. And they do assume that you remember all the proper steps, which actually after going through this only one time, you probably won't remember all those steps. So I created little text files for you guys that outlines all of the steps that you need to follow for each of the try it yourself exercises. So make sure you read through this because this is supposed to help you and will make your life ever so much easier. So I've got them for each one of these in addition to screenshots that are showing you what it looks like. Now, as far as what you need to turn in, you will have to turn in some screenshots. Uh, you don't have to put anything on GitHub yet, but I do need to see that you completed this. So these are the different screenshots that you'll need to turn in, and you'll need to do that for the Learning Log app, and you'll also have to do that for the pizzeria. And so this is a summary of what you need to turn in. There are a lot of additional resources that I have linked into the lecture demo, and I've also included them here on the Django and different things that you can use for models, what the different commands mean. I've got a little cheat sheet here for you. So this is kind of an overview, just getting you started. Again, we're just doing very simple models. We're doing a view, which is kind of like a controller. And then we're also doing some very simple web pages. Nothing too fancy yet. If you run into problems, reach out. I can help you, but most of the time, the problems arise from typos or not following conventions. Those are the two things that are going to get you into trouble here. Okay, and so I would look for the typo and I would look for any deviation that you made from the conventions.